Impressions are impressive. At least I think so. The people that have the tone of voice down, and the cadence down, and the mannerisms down, those people, those are impressive to me. Impressions are impressive. Now, I think they're impressive because, quite frankly, I've always wanted to be able to do it. I've always wanted to be able to impersonate somebody else. I just think it'd be fun, but I'm not really all that good at it. For example, like I could try to impersonate Pastor John preaching. I could try it. Like I could take the iPad and I could put it in the middle because that's where it goes. But he's a little bit shorter than me, so I'm gonna lower it a little bit here for him. And I'm gonna turn it sideways because that's what he does, right? And I'm gonna come over here on this side and I'm gonna make my first point, and it's gonna be exciting. And then I'm going to come back here, I'm going to scroll a little bit to find out where I am in that message. And then I'm going to find it, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to make my second point. And it's going to be so exciting. And I'm going to come back, and I'm going to scroll a little bit. But then, to end it, do you know what he does to end it? It's a two-step process. It's a step to his left, and then a step to his right, and he's in front of the iPad. And this is where you know that the sermon is about to come to an end because Pastor John is in front of his iPad. And I could end the whole thing, right? I could say, and all God's people said, and you would say, Amen. Yeah. I could do it, but I don't have his tone of voice down. I don't have his cadence down. I might have some of his mannerisms down, but that's about all. Or I could try to be Pastor Tim, right? I could try to talk to you like Pastor Tim talks, right? When you're telling me something that I think is cool, I'm not just going to say the word cool once, am I? No, I'm going to say that's cool twice. That's cool. That's Pastor Tim. And I'm gonna drop the word wifey in there at least once, right? That's Pastor Tim. But I don't have his tone of voice down. I might have some of his mannerisms down, but his cadence, I don't have that down either. Now, to be fair, I did ask Pastor John and Pastor Tim what they would do to impersonate me, and they both agreed that they would need to raise their voice about 3 octaves higher. They would need to talk 3 times as fast and move 3 times as much. They both agreed if they did those things, then they might have it down. Impressions are impressive. Now, I tell you that because we are wrapping up our teaching series here at St. Peter's that we've been calling Deep Faith, where we are trying to discern fantasy from reality. Now, with the rise of deepfakes on the internet, that has made it increasingly difficult. But what we've been saying is that though deepfakes to the internet might be new, to the Christian faith, deepfakes are nothing new. The Christian faith has been struggling with deepfakes for a long time. We've been trying to figure out what is reality and what is fantasy, what is true and what is not, what is scripturally correct and what is not, what is doctrinally correct and what is not. Even Paul himself was dealing with deepfakes. In Galatians 1, he calls them false gospels. And he said false gospels do one of 2 things. At the best, they confuse people. At the worst, they pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the deepfake that we're looking at this morning does the latter. It perverts the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, this deepfake has a lot of names. The health and wealth gospel, the success gospel, the seed and faith gospel, the word and faith movement. They're known by calling God the giver of bling, B-L-I-N-G. But perhaps we know it most by its most common name. It's the prosperity gospel. Now, the prosperity gospel came to popularity in the 1940s with a guy by the name of Oral Roberts. Now, Oral Roberts, what he did is that he believed that those things that God promises to God's people at the end can be fully manifested, fully actualized, fully realized in the here and now. And the verse from 3 John 2 is kind of key to the prosperity gospel, to the prosperity theology. Third John is one of the shortest books of the Bible. It's not 3 John chapter 2. 3 John just has one chapter. It's 3 John verse 2. And 3 John verse 2 says this: "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well." Now, this is John's way to basically say hello to those Christians that he's writing to. But Oral Roberts talks about when he read this verse. He said the day after he read this verse, he went and purchased the Cadillac of Cadillacs back in the 1940s. It was a Buick. He went and purchased a Buick. And he said he remembers sitting in that car, and then he got a message from God saying that he needs to go heal the sick and raise a lot of money doing it. Now, around this framework of the prosperity gospel, around this theology, there's these words called sowing a seed. And sowing a seed in the prosperity gospel, it can be a financial gift, it can be a prayer, it can be a confession of who Jesus is. But the point is that you need to sow seeds. You need to have an outward sign of the real, authentic faith that you have. And once you make that outward sign, once you make that first move, once you sow the seed, then God will bless you exponentially. Now, what's behind this is this picture of a God who has his hands tied behind his back. And he's waiting for you to make the first move. He's waiting for you to sow the seed. He's waiting for your financial donation. He's waiting for that prayer. He's waiting for your confession of Jesus. And then once you make the first move, then those handcuffs are gone. And then he will reach into the treasure chest that's in heaven, and he will bless you exponentially. You give a gift of $10, watch God give you $100 the next week. You say a prayer for healing, watch God help you run a marathon that next year. You say Jesus is Lord in this part of your life, watch what he does with the rest. It's this idea of sowing a seed. Now, this teaching really took off. And at the height of Oral Roberts' ministry, it was worth $120 million. This type of framework, this type of theology is what gets you on the New York Times bestseller list. This type of framework, this type of theology is what sells out stadiums. This type of framework, this type of theology is a part of the largest churches in America. This type of framework, this type of theology gives you the ear of really influential people. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know or to understand the actions or the motives behind those people that preach and teach this. But I'm also not going to pretend that it's true. Now, I have a quote from a prominent prosperity preacher that I think really is at the core of what this is. So that we can all wrap our minds around what this whole prosperity gospel thing is. So here's what a prominent prosperity preacher says. He says, Jesus came to redeem us from Satan's power and his dominion over us. We are to reign as kings in life, which means we have dominion over our lives. That means that we are to dominate, not be dominated. Circumstances are not to dominate you. Poverty is not to rule and reign over you. You are to rule and reign over poverty. Disease and sickness is not to rule and reign over you. You are to rule and reign over sickness. We are to reign as kings through Jesus Christ, in whom we have redemption. That is the prosperity gospel full tilt. But in this whole understanding, this whole framework, there's a key misunderstanding. And I want to give you this key misunderstanding not just so that you are able to identify reality from fantasy, but so that you are able to love the true gospel found in the cross of Christ even more. The key misunderstanding in the prosperity gospel is called, they have an over-realized eschatology, which I know is a $20 word, okay? So hang with me. Let me explain it a little bit for you. The word eschatology just simply means end times. Right? It's the last days. It's what happens when Jesus comes back. It's his second coming. It's his second advent. It's the last day. It's the day of judgment. It's eschatology. That's what it is. Now, when somebody has an over-realized eschatology, what they look to do is that they look to take those promises that are given to us in the end and actualize them and fully realize them and manifest them in the here and now. That's an over-realized eschatology. So let me ask you, does God promise that he is going to heal all disease? Yes. Yes, he does. Does God promise that he will wipe away every tear from your eyes, that there will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more trauma? Yes. Yes, he does. Does he promise that there's going to be a world where infants don't live but just a few days? Yes. Yes, he does. That was our Old Testament reading. Does he promise that there is going to be a land that is bountiful, full of riches, where there is no hunger, where there is no thirst, where there is no want, where there is no need, where the lamb can lie down with the wolf, which is just to say that the animosity that is in creation now is gone, that creation will not implode on itself, that creation one day will stop trying to kill each other? Does he promise this? Yes, he does. And can we be certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that that is absolutely guaranteed to you 100% because of the work of Christ on the cross? Yes. But the question becomes, when? Is it in the here and now, or is it at the end? It's at the end. Does God promise that he's going to heal every disease? Yes, yes, he does. But is that in the here and now, or is it at the end? It's at the end. Does God promise that there will be no more pain, suffering, and trauma? Yes, he does. But is it at the here and now, or is it at the end? It's at the end. Does God promise that one day there will be a world where infants don't die? Does he promise that there is a land that is bountiful, plentiful, full of riches, where there is no more hunger, where there is no more thirst, where there is no more want, where there is no more need, where a lamb can lie down with a wolf? Does he promise that? Yes, he does. But when? Is it in the here and now, or is it at the end? All of those promises are at the end. An over-realized eschatology looks to take those promises and try to fully realize them in the here and now when God promises them to us at the end. Now, do we get glimpses of this? Yeah, we do. We get glimpses about what this may look like, but health and wealth are promised to you at the end. Now, that doesn't mean that God left us nothing in the meantime. Doesn't mean that he left us floundering, squandering on what we should do. No, God has given us many things. He has given you all of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross that he accomplished for you. It is yours freely. He has promised that he will give you his spirit that will abide with you in all trials and temptations. He has promised to use those trials and temptations to form you into the image and the likeness of Christ. He has promised that all of your oopses, your hang-ups, those times that you try to wander to a room and you end up getting lost. He has promised that all of the sin that you commit and that is committed against you, that is, as far as the east is from the west, forgiven. He has promised to place you into a family that will last forever, that's here in the church. He has promised you good things. Now, that might not be all that we want in the here and now, but God has promised that it's all that you need in the here and now. Now, in this whole thing, I don't want to swing the pendulum to the other side. That is to say that I don't want to swing the pendulum that when you are here, and if you're here and you are healthy, and if you are here and you are wealthy, that you are inherently bad. That's not it either. That's swinging the pendulum to the other side. But here's what I do want to say. That your health and your wealth are not signs of God's approval. They're not signs of God's blessing. If they were, then Paul and Jesus, they'd be on God's blacklist. And drug dealers and embezzlers would be apples of his eye. Your health and your wealth are not signs of God's approval or God's blessing. You get God's approval and all the blessings that you need in your baptism. That is where God gives you the cross of Christ and everything in it. Your health and your wealth are not signs of God's approval. They're not signs of God's blessings. He did not set it up that way. That's what he's getting at in our gospel reading. In Matthew chapter 6, he says this, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal." God's saying, I didn't set it up this way. I didn't set it up for the gifts of this world to be an approval process. Because he knows that if he did, then it would go really quickly from our hands straight to our head and our heart. Look, this is what we struggle with in the here and now, right? This is what we struggle with. Give me a clean new pair of Jordans, and I might forget about Jesus for a couple minutes, right? What is it for you? Is it a new car, and then you think your family's safe? Just a couple extra thousand, 10,000, 100,000 in the nest egg, and then you know that you'll be taken care of? What is it for you? We struggle with this all the time. But your health and your wealth are not signs of God's approval. Maybe you're there with me. Say, all right, I get it, I'm there, but what's the point? What's the point of bringing this up on a Sunday morning of all days? Well, quite frankly, the stakes are high, and we stand to lose a lot. If you believe in the prosperity gospel, you will go into one of two things, and both of them push you away from Christ. You will either be deeply disappointed with God or deeply devastated with what you lack. Here's what I mean. Hardship happens to all of us, right? It's just the human experience. Life happens, that's what we like to say, right? But hardships and trials and sufferings, they happen to everybody. The question becomes, what do you do when they happen? In the framework of the prosperity gospel, what do you do when hardships happen? When When prayer doesn't heal your cancer, what do you do? When your faith doesn't miraculously mend your marriage, what do you do when the child is stillborn? What do you do when you're putting your loved one into the ground? What do you do when your own health is failing you? In the framework of the prosperity gospel, you are likely to become angry at God for not holding up his end of the bargain. You prayed earnestly, you sowed seeds, you had faith, you had a strong faith, and now you look at God and say, I've held up my end of the deal, why aren't you holding up yours? And when you become angry at God, it separates you. You become deeply disappointed in God. You're either deeply disappointed or you're deeply devastated by what you lack. I thought that my prayer life was good, but maybe it's not as good as I thought. Maybe I should have sown a few more seeds. Maybe my faith isn't as strong as I thought that it was. Do I even have faith? You become deeply devastated by what you lack. Look, I'll challenge anyone who believes in and teaches the prosperity gospel in the full tilt sense, the whole thing. Go and preach this in a hospital room. Go and preach this at the side of a casket. Go and preach this at any point in time when somebody is going in through hardship. I challenge them to do this because I know that they won't, because I know that they can't. The prosperity gospel provides no hope. It provides no comfort. It perverts the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, I know this is not just a theological exercise. This is an actual exercise. Because I know that there's people here who would love a little bit more health. I know that there's people here that would love a little bit more wealth. I know that there's people here who wish that disease and sickness didn't rule and reign over them, that they wish that they could rule and reign over disease and sickness. I know there's people here that wish that poverty didn't rule and reign over them and wish that they could rule and reign over poverty. It's not a theological exercise. But here's what the deep faith says, not the deep fake. Here's what the authentic Christianity says. It says, all glory be to God when he uses our weaknesses, for it is when we are weak that he is strong. The authentic Christian faith, the deep faith, says all glory be to God when we go through trials and temptations, because we know that he is going to use them to form us into the likeness of Christ. The authentic Christian faith says all glory be to God when our wealth and, yes, our health fail us, because they will. But it is in that moment when your health is failing you that he delivers you gifts far beyond this world. Proclaim that. Believe that. Not the imitation, not the deep fake, but the deep faith. Come soon, Lord Jesus. Amen.